A late-night phone call. A mysterious woman hiding from killers. A single father who just wanted to fix a dock. But when Adrian Cole arrived at that crumbling lake house, he didn't know he was walking straight into a deadly conspiracy, or that saving her would cost him everything. This is their story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Adrian Cole stood in the rain outside the hardware store, staring at his phone like it might explode. The screen showed his bank account balance, $43.16. Rent was due in 9 days. Mason needed new shoes, but the kid's toes were practically poking through the canvas, and the truck had started making that grinding noise again, the kind that meant expensive and soon. He shoved the phone back in his pocket and unlocked the truck. Water dripped off the brim of his baseball cap. His jacket was soaked through. He'd spent the last 6 hours patching a roof on the north side of Blackwater Ridge for a client who kept saying she'd pay him real soon, which in his experience meant never. "Dad, I'm hungry." Mason sat in the passenger seat with his backpack on his lap, looking up at Adrian with those wide brown eyes that could gut a man at 50 paces. Same eyes his mother had. Same way of tilting his head when he wanted something. "I know, bud. We'll grab something on the way home." "Can we get pizza?" Adrian started the engine. The grinding noise came right on cue, loud enough to make Mason flinch. "We'll see." They didn't get pizza. They got dollar burgers from the gas station and ate them in the truck with the heater rattling and the rain hammering the windshield. Mason didn't complain. He never did. That was the problem. 8 years old and already too good at making himself small, at not asking for things, at pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Adrian watched him pick at his fries and felt the familiar weight settle onto his chest. 3 years since the accident. 3 years of swimming upstream, of patching together a life that kept springing new leaks, of trying to be both parents to a kid who deserved so much better than a father who could barely keep the lights on. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Adrian almost didn't answer. Unknown numbers were usually debt collectors or scammers or someone calling about his truck's extended warranty, but something made him swipe to accept. "This is Adrian." Silence on the other end. Not dead air. He could hear breathing, soft, uncertain. "Hello? Are you the contractor?" A woman's voice, young, strained, like she'd been crying or hadn't slept in days. "Depends what you need. I saw your ad, the one on the community board at the library. It said you do repairs. Decks, docks, structural work." Adrian leaned back against the headrest. He'd put that ad up 6 months ago and gotten exactly 2 calls from it. One turned out to be a wrong number. The other wanted him to build an entire edition for $300. "Yeah, that's me. What's the job?" Another pause, longer this time. "I have a dock. It's falling apart. I need it fixed." "Okay, where are you located?" "Lake House, north end of Howell Lake, past the marina, past the cabins, the blue one at the end of the gravel road." Adrian knew the area. Isolated. No neighbors for half a mile in either direction. The kind of place people went when they wanted privacy, or when they were hiding. "When do you need it done?" "Now. Now like this week, or now like tonight. I'll pay you $5,000 if you start immediately." Adrian sat up straight. Mason looked over at him, chewing a fry. "Say that again." $5,000, cash. Half up front, half when you finish. But you have to come now." Every instinct Adrian had developed over 32 years of life started screaming. This was wrong. This was a setup. This was how people got robbed or worse. Nobody offered that kind of money for dock repair. Nobody. "Lady, I don't know what you're—" "Please." Her voice cracked. "I know how this sounds. I know. But I'm not trying to scam you. I just need help and I need it now and I can pay. I have the money. I just need someone who won't ask questions." Adrian glanced at Mason, at the worn-out shoes, at the dashboard where the check engine light had been on for 2 months. "What's wrong with the dock?" "It's rotted through. I almost fell through it yesterday. It's dangerous." "Why not call someone in the morning? Get a proper estimate?" "Because I need it done quietly and quickly, and I'm willing to pay for that." There it was, the real reason. Adrian closed his eyes. "You in some kind of trouble?" "No. I just value my privacy." "Right. Are you interested or not?" He should say no. He should hang up and forget this conversation ever happened, but his brain was already doing the math. $5,000. That was rent. That was Mason's shoes and the truck repair and groceries for 2 months. That was breathing room. Let me see the place first. I'm not agreeing to anything until I know what I'm dealing with. That's fine. How soon can you get here? Adrian checked the time. Almost 8. Mason had school tomorrow, which meant he needed to be in bed by 9. I've got my kid with me. Bring him. I'm not bringing my kid to some stranger's house in the middle of nowhere at night. Then come alone. But come tonight. Adrian rubbed his face. This was insane. Everything about this screamed bad idea. I can be there in an hour, but I'm not making any promises. Thank you. The address is 1847 Lakeshore Drive. Blue House. You'll see it. She hung up before he could respond. Mason was staring at him. Who was that? Someone with a job. Are we going? I am. You're going to Mrs. Chen's. Dad, no. I hate Mrs. Chen's. She makes me watch her shows and they're all boring. It's just for a couple hours. I'll pick you up before bedtime. Why can't I come with you? Because I said so. Mason slumped in his seat and went back to his fries. Adrian started the truck and tried to ignore the grinding noise and the voice in his head telling him he was making a massive mistake. Eats. Mrs. Chen lived 2 blocks from their apartment in a house that smelled like camphor and old newspapers. She answered the door in a floral housecoat and looked at Mason like he was a stray puppy. You're out late. Work emergency. I'll be back by 10. He had dinner? Yes, ma'am. She stepped aside to let Mason in. The kid gave Adrian one last betrayed look before disappearing into the house. Adrian drove north out of town with the radio playing static and his hands tight on the wheel. The rain had let up, but the roads were slick and dark. Howell Lake sat about 15 miles outside Blackwater Ridge, surrounded by pine forest and not much else. It was the kind of place tourists came in summer and locals avoided the rest of the year. He passed the marina, past the turnoff to the cabin rentals. The road narrowed to gravel and his headlights cut through the trees like knives. Then he saw it. The blue house sat at the end of a long driveway, 2 stories of weathered siding and dark windows. A single light burned on the front porch. Behind it, the lake spread out black and glassy under a sky full of stars. Adrian parked and killed the engine. The house looked abandoned. No cars in the driveway. No signs of life except that one light. He grabbed the flashlight from the glove compartment and climbed out. The porch steps creaked under his weight. He knocked. For a long moment, nothing. Then the door opened a crack, and a woman's face appeared in the gap. She was younger than he'd expected. Late 20s, maybe. Pale skin, dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, eyes that looked too big for her face. She wore an oversized gray sweater and jeans and kept one hand on the doorframe like she might bolt at any second. Adrian? That's me. She studied him for a few seconds, then opened the door wider. Come in. The inside of the house was sparse. Hardwood floors. Minimal furniture. Everything looked temporary, like she'd moved in yesterday and planned to leave tomorrow. A single lamp in the corner cast long shadows across the walls. I'm Lena. Lena, okay. You want to show me this dock? It's out back. She led him through the kitchen to a sliding glass door that opened onto a deck overlooking the lake. Adrian followed her down a set of wooden stairs to the shoreline. The dock was worse than he'd expected. It jutted about 20 feet into the water, old pressure-treated lumber gone soft with rot. Half the boards were missing. The support posts leaned at ugly angles. One good storm, and the whole thing would collapse. Adrian walked to the edge and shone his flashlight down. The water was dark and cold and smelled like decay. When's the last time someone used this? I don't know. It was like this when I got here. How long you been here? 2 months? He turned to look at her. She stood on the shore with her arms wrapped around herself, watching him like he might disappear. You bought a place with a dock this bad and didn't notice? I didn't buy it. I'm renting. From who? A property management company. They handle vacation rentals. Adrian stepped carefully back onto solid ground. This isn't a repair job. This is a full rebuild. New posts, new decking, new hardware. You're looking at a week minimum. Maybe 2. How much? More than 5,000. How much more? 8. Maybe 10 depending on materials. Lena didn't even blink. I'll pay 12. But you start tonight, and you don't tell anyone you're working here. Adrian stared at her. Why? That's not part of the deal. Lady, if you're in some kind of trouble, I'm not. I just need this done, and I need discretion. Can you do that or not? $12,000. Adrian's brain stuttered over the number. That was 4 months of rent. That was everything. Let me see the cash. She walked back into the house and returned a minute later with a backpack. She unzipped it and pulled out 6 stacks of $100 bills, rubber-banded and pristine. 6,000 now. 6 when you're done. Adrian picked up one of the stacks and fanned through it. All real as far as he could tell. Where'd you get this kind of money? Does it matter? Yeah, it kind of does. I saved it. Is that a crime? Most people don't keep 12 grand in cash sitting around. Most people aren't me. They stood there in the dark with the lake lapping at the shore and the silence stretching between them. Adrian knew he should walk away, knew this whole thing felt wrong in ways he couldn't articulate. But he thought about Mason's shoes and the truck and the $43 in his account. You pay for materials up front. I give you receipts for everything. And if anything feels off, I'm gone. Lena nodded. Deal. Adrian shoved the cash into his jacket pocket and looked back at the dock. I'll need to pick up supplies in the morning. I can start demo tomorrow afternoon. Why not now? Because it's almost 9 at night and I can't see what I'm doing. There are floodlights on the deck. I also have a kid I need to pick up. Something shifted in her expression. You have a son? Yeah. How old? 8? What's his name? Mason? She was quiet for a moment, staring out at the water. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to keep you. Tomorrow is fine. Adrian turned to go, then stopped. You said you need discretion. What does that mean exactly? It means no one can know you're here. No posting about the job, no telling your friends, no paper trail. You want this under the table. Yes. That's illegal. Only if we get caught. Adrian shook his head. I do everything by the book. Permits, invoices, the whole thing. I'll pay you $15,000 if you skip the permits. He stared at her. What the hell are you running from? Nothing. I'm not running from anything. Then why all the secrecy? That's none of your business. It is if it puts me or my kid in danger. It won't. You can't know that. Lena stepped closer. In the porch light, he could see how exhausted she looked. Bruises under her eyes, skin too pale, the kind of tired that came from weeks of bad sleep. I'm not a criminal, she said quietly. I'm not dealing drugs or laundering money or doing anything illegal. I just need to stay off the radar for a while. And I need this dock fixed because it's the only thing keeping me sane. Can you understand that? Adrian wanted to say no. Wanted to hand the cash back and drive away and forget this night ever happened. $15,000, he said instead. Yes. Half now, half when I'm done. And if I get so much as a weird feeling, I walk. Agreed. She went back inside and returned with another 3 stacks of bills. Adrian counted it twice, then stuffed it into his pockets. He felt like a character in a bad movie, the kind who always ended up dead by the 3rd act. I'll be back tomorrow around noon. Have the floodlights ready. Lena nodded. She looked like she wanted to say something else, but couldn't find the words. Adrian walked back to his truck and didn't look back until he was halfway down the driveway. In the rearview mirror, he could see her standing on the porch, small and alone in the circle of light. He drove back to town with $7,500 in his jacket and a knot in his stomach that wouldn't go away. Mechanic. Mrs. Chen was watching a game show when Adrian knocked. She let him in with a disapproving look. It's past 10. I know. I'm sorry. Mason was asleep on the couch with his backpack still on. Adrian lifted him carefully and carried him to the truck. The kid didn't wake up, just made a small sound and pressed his face into Adrian's shoulder. By the time they got home, it was almost 11. Adrian got Mason into bed without turning on the lights, pulled off the worn-out shoes, and covered him with the blanket. Then he sat at the kitchen table and counted the money again. $7,500. Enough to change everything. Enough to give Mason the kind of stability he deserved. Enough to stop drowning, or enough to pull them both under. Adrian looked at his phone. He could call the police, report the cash, say it felt wrong and let them handle it. But then he thought about the way Lena had looked at him when he mentioned Mason, the softness in her expression, the exhaustion in her eyes. She wasn't dangerous, he was sure of that much, but she was scared, and whatever she was scared of was big enough to make her hide at the end of a gravel road with a backpack full of cash and a dock that was falling into the lake. Adrian put the money in an envelope and hid it in the back of the closet behind the winter coats. Then he lay down on the couch and stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. He dropped Mason at school at 8 and drove straight to the lumberyard. Loaded the truck with pressure-treated posts, decking boards, galvanized screws, and everything else he'd needed. Paid cash. Didn't give his name. By noon, he was back at the blue house with his tools and a cooler full of water. Lena met him on the porch. She looked worse than the night before. Same clothes, same ponytail, eyes red like she'd been crying. "You okay?" Adrian asked. "I'm fine. Do you need help unloading?" "I've got it." He hauled everything down to the dock and spent the next hour pulling up rotten boards and marking the posts that needed replacing. The work was mindless and physical, and he was grateful for it. Gave him something to focus on besides the voice in his head screaming that this was a mistake. Around 2, Lena came down with a sandwich and a bottle of iced tea. "You didn't have to do that," Adrian said. "I know." She sat on the shore and watched him work. Didn't say anything, just sat. After a while, Adrian stopped and wiped the sweat off his face. "You live here alone?" "Yes." "No family nearby?" "No." "Friends?" "Why are you asking?" "Because you hired a stranger to rebuild your dock in the middle of the night and paid him in cash. That's not normal behavior." Lena picked at the grass. "I like my privacy." "There's privacy, and then there's this." "What's this?" "Isolation. The kind that makes people do stupid things." She looked up at him. "Are you always this direct?" "Usually." "Does it work for you?" "Not really." She almost smiled. Almost. Adrian went back to work. By the time the sun started to set, he'd removed all the old decking and half the support posts. His back ached and his hands were raw, and he felt better than he had in months. Lena brought him dinner around 7, chicken and rice in a plastic container. "You cook this?" "Don't sound so surprised." "I just figured you'd order out." "There's nowhere to order from out here." Adrian sat on the shore and ate while she stood a few feet away, arms crossed, staring at the lake. "You ever go out there?" he asked. "Where?" "The lake. Swimming, kayaking, anything." "No." "Why not?" "I don't like the water." "Then why rent a lake house?" She didn't answer. Adrian finished eating and handed her the empty container. "I'm going to need a few days to finish this. The new posts have to be set in concrete. That takes time to cure." "How long?" "A week. Maybe less if the weather holds." "Okay. You'll be around?" "Where else would I go?" Adrian stood and brushed the dirt off his jeans. "I'll be back tomorrow morning. Early." "How early?" 6. "I'll have coffee ready." He walked back to the truck and loaded his tools. Lena watched from the porch, silhouette against the light. "Adrian?" He turned. "Yeah?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For not asking more questions." He didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded and drove away. The next 5 days fell into a rhythm. Adrian would drop Mason at school, drive to the lake house, and work until dark. Lena would bring him coffee in the morning and food in the afternoon, and sometimes she'd sit on the shore and watch him. They didn't talk much. Didn't need to. On the 3rd day, Mason asked why Adrian smelled like sawdust. "New job." "What kind?" "Dock repair." "Can I come see?" "Not this time, bud." "Why not?" "Because the client values her privacy." "Her?" Adrian glanced at Mason. "Yeah, her." "Is she nice?" "I don't know, I guess." "Is she pretty?" "Why do you care?" Mason shrugged. "Just asking." But the question stuck with Adrian. Was Lena pretty? He hadn't really thought about it. He'd been too focused on the work, on the money, on the strangeness of the whole situation. But yeah, she was. In a tired, haunted kind of way. Not that it mattered. On the 5th day, Adrian was setting the last post when Lena came down with her phone in her hand. She looked pale, shaken. Everything okay? She didn't answer, just stared at the screen like it had showed her something terrible. Lena? I'm fine. You don't look fine. She shoved the phone in her pocket and walked back to the house without another word. Adrian watched her go. Then he looked around the property. Really looked. That's when he saw it. A camera. Small. Black. Mounted in the branches of a pine tree about 30 feet from the shore. He walked over and studied it. Professional grade, motion activated, pointed directly at the dock. Adrian looked back at the house, at the dark windows, at the woman who paid in cash and lived alone and flinched every time her phone rang. Whatever Lena was running from, it was closer than she wanted to admit, and Adrian was standing right in the middle of it. Adrian didn't mention the camera. Not that day, not the next. He finished setting the post, let the concrete cure, and started laying decking boards while his brain worked through possibilities he didn't want to consider. Surveillance equipment didn't belong in random pine trees. Neither did the kind of fear he saw in Lena's eyes every time a car passed on the distant road or her phone buzzed in her pocket. On the 7th day, he brought Mason. He hadn't planned to. Mrs. Chen called that morning saying her sister was in the hospital and she couldn't watch him. Adrian's other options were non-existent. He'd thought about canceling the day's work, but the dock was almost finished, and Lena had been checking on progress twice a day, like she was counting down to something. So he packed Mason's backpack with books and snacks and drove to the lake house with the kid riding shotgun, asking questions Adrian didn't know how to answer. Is this where you've been working? Yeah. It's pretty far. Yep. Does the lady know I'm coming? I texted her. That was a lie. Adrian had decided somewhere around mile marker 9 that asking permission would give Lena time to say no, and he needed this day's pay. Needed to finish the job before whatever was making her jumpy caught up with her. Lena was on the porch when they pulled up. She wore the same oversized sweater she'd had on 3 days ago, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. She looked younger like that, more uncertain. Adrian climbed out and pulled Mason's door open. Sorry about this. Childcare fell through. Lena came down the steps slowly, eyes on Mason like he was something fragile she might break by looking at too hard. Hi, she said. Mason gave her a small wave. Hi. I'm Lena. I'm Mason. I know. Your dad talks about you. Mason looked up at Adrian with surprise. Adrian felt his neck heat up. Just a little, he muttered. Lena almost smiled. He said you like to read. Yeah. What kind of books? Adventure stuff? Magic? Dragons? I have some books inside, old ones from when I was younger. You want to see? Mason glanced at Adrian for permission. Adrian nodded. Okay, Mason said. They went into the house together, and Adrian stood in the driveway feeling like he'd just watched something shift in a direction he didn't understand. He grabbed his tools and headed down to the dock. An hour later, Mason came running down the shore with a book in his hands and excitement written all over his face. Dad, look! She has the whole Chronicles set. First editions. That's great, bud. Can I read out here? Sure. Stay off the dock, though. It's not finished. Mason dropped onto the grass and cracked open the book. Lena followed a few minutes later with 2 mugs of coffee and sat on the shore a few feet from Mason. He's sweet, she said quietly. He has his moments. Does he look like his mom? Adrian's hand stilled on the board he was screwing down. Yeah. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked. It's fine. It wasn't fine. It hadn't been fine for 3 years, but Adrian had gotten good at saying it was. They worked in silence for a while. Mason read. Lena drank her coffee and watched the lake like she was waiting for something to surface. Adrian forced his brain to focus on measurements and angles instead of the way she kept checking her phone. Around noon, Mason looked up from his book. I'm hungry. Lena stood immediately. I'll make lunch. You don't have to do that, Adrian said. I want to. She disappeared into the house. Mason went back to reading. Adrian tried to ignore the uneasy feeling crawling up his spine. 15 minutes later, Lena called them inside. She'd made sandwiches and cut up fruit and poured lemonade into glasses that didn't match. They sat at the kitchen table and Mason told her about school and his teacher and the science project he was working on. Lena listened like every word mattered, asked questions, laughed at his jokes. Adrian watched her transform. The tension in her shoulders eased, her eyes brightened. She looked like a completely different person. "What's your project about?" she asked Mason. "Volcanoes. We have to build one and make it erupt." "That sounds fun." "It's kind of hard. Dad's not very good at crafts." "Hey," Adrian said. "It's true. You said so yourself." Lena grinned. "I used to be pretty good at that stuff. Maybe I could help." "Really?" "Sure, if your dad doesn't mind." Mason looked at Adrian with hope blazing in his eyes. Adrian knew he should say no, should keep whatever this was from getting more complicated. But Mason had been so quiet lately, so closed off, and here he was laughing at a stranger's kitchen table like he'd forgotten how to be sad. "Yeah," Adrian said, "that'd be great." They spent the next hour at the table while Lena sketched out designs and Mason bounced ideas, and Adrian pretended to read the news on his phone. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen Mason this animated, this happy. It made his chest ache. When they finally went back outside, the afternoon had turned warm. Mason sprawled in the grass with his book, while Adrian finished the last section of decking. Lena brought out a blanket and a laptop and sat cross-legged working on something she didn't explain. Adrian caught her watching Mason a few times. Not in a creepy way. More like she was trying to memorize him, like she thought he might disappear if she looked away. "You're good with kids," Adrian said during a water break. "I had a brother, a long time ago." "Had?" Her expression closed off. "He died. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago." But the way she said it made it sound like yesterday. They didn't talk much after that. Adrian worked until the sun started sinking and the light turned gold across the water. He stood back and looked at the dock. It was solid, clean, better than it had been in decades. "It's done," he said. Lena walked down to see. She stepped onto the boards carefully, testing her weight. Then she walked to the end and stood looking out at the lake. "It's perfect. It'll hold. Should last you 20 years if you maintain it." She turned to face him. "Thank you." "You're paying me. No need to thank me." "Still," Adrian wiped his hands on his jeans. "I'll clean up my tools tomorrow. Get everything out of your way. You don't have to rush. Job's done. No point dragging it out." Something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe. Or loneliness. "Right," she said. Mason came running down with his book. "Are we leaving?" "Yeah, bud, pack up." "Can I come back?" Lena said she'd help with my volcano. Adrian looked at Lena. She gave a small shrug. "We'll see," Adrian said. They loaded into the truck and drove away. In the rearview mirror, Adrian watched Lena stand on the dock until they disappeared around the curve. "I like her," Mason said. "Yeah? She's sad, though." Adrian glanced at him. "What makes you say that?" "I don't know. She just is. You can tell." Kids saw things adults missed. Adrian had learned that the hard way. "Maybe," he said. That night, Mason fell asleep with the borrowed book on his chest. Adrian tucked him in and went to the kitchen to count the remaining payment Lena had given him that afternoon. $7,500. Exactly half, which meant she'd trusted him to finish, trusted him not to disappear with the deposit. Adrian put the money in the envelope with the rest and tried not to think about how empty the house would feel tomorrow when he didn't have a reason to drive to the lake. He lasted until 8 in the morning before he broke. The excuse was weak. He told himself he needed to check the dock one more time, make sure everything had settled properly. But really, he just wanted to see her again, wanted to make sure she was okay. The blue house looked the same as always. Adrian knocked and waited. No answer. He knocked again. Harder. The door opened a crack and Lena peered out. Her face was pale, eyes wide and red-rimmed. She'd been crying. "What happened?" Adrian asked. "Nothing. I'm fine." "You're not fine." "Adrian, please, just go." "Not until you tell me what's wrong." She pressed her hand to her forehead. "You need to leave. You need to forget you ever worked here." "What are you talking about?" "I'm serious. Take Mason and go somewhere. Anywhere but here." Adrian's stomach dropped. "Are you in danger?" "No, maybe. I don't know." "That's not an answer." Lena looked past him at the driveway, at the empty road beyond. When she spoke again, her voice shook. "They know where I am." "Who?" "The people I've been hiding from." What people? It doesn't matter. They found me and they're coming, and you can't be here when they do. Adrian stepped inside and shut the door behind him. Start from the beginning. There's no time. Make time. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she walked to the couch and sat down like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Adrian sat across from her. Waited. I worked for a tech company, Lena said finally. Vault Dynamics. Have you heard of it? No. Most people haven't. They do data management, security systems, contracts with governments and corporations. Very exclusive, very expensive. Okay. I was a financial analyst, not high up, just someone who processed numbers and wrote reports. Boring work. But I was good at it. What happened? I found something I wasn't supposed to find. Discrepancies in the accounts, money moving through shell companies, millions of dollars disappearing into offshore accounts. Adrian's chest tightened. You found proof of embezzlement. Worse, fraud, money laundering, payments to foreign entities. It was a whole network, executives, board members, people at the top. They were using the company as a front. Did you report it? I tried, went to my supervisor. He told me to drop it, said I was misunderstanding the data, but I knew what I saw. So I made copies, downloaded everything to an external drive, went to the SEC. What did they do? Nothing. The company has connections everywhere. Lawyers, politicians, law enforcement. My complaint disappeared, and then I started getting warnings. What kind of warnings? Anonymous calls, someone following me home from work. My apartment was broken into, but nothing was taken, just moved. Little things to let me know they could get to me whenever they wanted. Adrian felt cold. So you ran. I took the hard drive and I ran, changed my name, paid cash for everything, moved every few weeks. I've been running for 8 months. Why didn't you go to the police? Because I don't know who I can trust. For all I know, they have people in the police, in the FBI, everywhere. And now they found you. Lena pulled out her phone and handed it to him. The screen showed a text message from an unknown number. We know where you are. Last chance to give it back. Adrian read it twice. When did you get this? An hour ago. Have you responded? No. Good. Don't. He handed the phone back and stood. His mind was racing through options, none of them good. Where's the hard drive? Hidden. Where? Lena hesitated. Then she walked to the sliding door and pointed at the dock. Under there. In a waterproof case attached to one of the support posts. I figured no one would look. Adrian almost laughed. Almost. You had me rebuild the dock with evidence of a felony underneath it. I didn't know you were going to dig up the posts. I replaced half of them, Lena. I checked every night, made sure the case was still there. He rubbed his face. This was insane. This was so far beyond anything he'd signed up for. You need to leave, he said. Right now. Pack a bag and go. Where? Anywhere. Canada? Mexico. Somewhere they can't find you. They'll find me. They always find me. Then go to the media. Leak the files. Make it public. They'll kill me before I get the chance. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Lena's voice cracked. You don't understand what these people are capable of. They're not going to let me walk away with this information. And now I've put you in danger too. You and Mason. The mention of Mason sent ice through Adrian's veins. Mason's not involved in this. He was here yesterday. They might have seen him. How? You said they just found you. I don't know. Maybe they've been watching for days, maybe weeks. Adrian went to the window and looked out at the trees, at the camera he'd spotted, at the empty driveway and the lake beyond. Do you have a car? He asked. No, I sold it months ago. How have you been getting groceries? Delivery. I don't leave the house. For 2 months you haven't left this house. I told you, I value my privacy. Adrian turned to face her. This isn't privacy. This is prison. It's survival. It's not living. I'm alive. That's what matters. Is it? They stared at each other. Lena looked like she might cry or scream or both. What do you want me to do? She asked quietly. I want you to fight back. How? I don't know yet, but running isn't working. You've been doing it for 8 months and they still found you. So maybe it's time to try something else. Like what? Adrian thought about Mason, about the money in his closet, about the dock he'd just built, and the woman standing in front of him who'd been kind to his son and made him laugh for the first time in months. Let me help you. You can't help me. This isn't your problem. You made it my problem when you paid me 15 grand and told me to keep quiet. I didn't know this would happen. Well, it did. So now we deal with it. Lena shook her head. You should take Mason and leave town. Change your number. Forget you ever met me. Is that what you want? Yes. I don't believe you. Her eyes filled with tears. Please don't do this. Do what? Pretend you can save me. You can't. No one can. Maybe not, but I can try. Why? You don't even know me. Adrian didn't have a good answer for that. Didn't know how to explain the pull he felt toward her, or the anger burning in his chest at the thought of her disappearing again. Because you helped my kid with his volcano project, he said finally, and because you're scared and alone and I know what that feels like. Lena wiped her eyes. This is a bad idea. Probably. You could get hurt. I've been hurt before. Not like this. Let me worry about that. She looked at him for a long time. Then she took a shaky breath and nodded. Okay. Okay? If you're serious about helping, there's something you should see. She led him down to the dock and knelt at the edge, reached underneath the boards and pulled out a black waterproof case about the size of a shoebox. She opened it and took out a small external hard drive. Everything's on here, she said. Financial records, emails, wire transfers. Enough to put 20 people in prison. Adrian took the drive. It weighed almost nothing. This is what they're after. Yes. And if they get it, then there's no proof, no case. They win. What if we make copies, send them to the media, the FBI, everyone? I tried that. Most reporters won't touch it without verification, and the ones who will end up dead or discredited. So we verify it. Find someone who can authenticate the data. Who? I don't know. A lawyer? A forensic accountant? Anyone I contact is at risk. Then we do it anonymously. Lena looked at him like he'd suggested they fly to the moon. You really think this could work? I think doing nothing definitely won't work. She took the hard drive back and held it like it might explode. If we do this, we have to be smart, careful. One mistake and we're both dead. Then we don't make mistakes. It's not that simple. I know. Adrian stood and offered her his hand. She looked at it. Then she took it and let him pull her to her feet. We should start tonight, she said, before they get here. You think they're coming tonight? I think they're already close. Adrian looked out at the lake. The sun was climbing and the water sparkled, and somewhere out there people were coming to hurt her. I need to get Mason somewhere safe. Where? I have a friend, 2 towns over. She's good people, discreet. Will she ask questions? Probably, but she won't push. Lena nodded. Okay, go. I'll start copying files. Make multiple copies, different formats, cloud storage, USB drives, everything. I know. Adrian started to leave, then stopped. Lena? Yeah? We're going to figure this out. She gave him a sad smile. You're very optimistic for someone whose life just got destroyed. It's not destroyed yet. Give it time. He drove back to town with his mind spinning, picked Mason up from school and told him they were going on an adventure. The kid bought it without question. Adrian's friend Sarah lived in a town called Millbrook, about 40 minutes south. She answered the door with flour on her hands and surprise on her face. Adrian, what are you doing here? I need a favor. She looked at Mason. Everything okay? Yeah, I just need you to watch him for a couple days, maybe a week. Work thing. Sarah studied his face. They'd known each other since high school. She could read him better than most. What kind of work thing? The complicated kind. Adrian, please, Sarah, I'll explain later. I just need to know he's safe. She looked at Mason again. Then she stepped aside. Okay, but you owe me an explanation. I know. Mason hugged Adrian tight. When are you coming back? Soon, bud. Be good for Sarah. I will. Adrian kissed the top of his head and walked away before he could change his mind. He drove back to the lake house as the sun started to set. Lena met him on the porch with a laptop and 3 USB drives. I made copies of everything, uploaded backups to encrypted servers. If something happens to me, the files go public automatically. Good. There's something else. What? I think they're already here. Adrian went cold. What do you mean? I heard a car about an hour ago. It stopped at the end of the driveway, idled for a few minutes, then left. Could have been someone turning around. Or it could have been them doing reconnaissance. Adrian looked at the driveway, at the trees pressing in, at the empty road beyond. We need to call the police. And tell them what? That I stole classified corporate documents and now the company wants them back? They'll arrest me. Better arrested than dead. You don't know that. She was right. He didn't. Then what do you want to do? Lena handed him one of the USB drives. Take this. If anything happens to me, get it to someone who can use it. A journalist, a lawyer, anyone. Nothing's going to happen to you. You can't promise that. Watch me. They went inside and locked the doors. Lena closed all the curtains and turned off most of the lights. They sat in the kitchen with the laptop between them and went through the files. Adrian wasn't a financial expert, but even he could see the evidence was damning. Wire transfers to shell companies, invoices for services never rendered, emails discussing payoffs and bribes. It was all there. How did they hide this for so long, he asked. They didn't hide it. They just made sure no one was looking. Until you. Until me. Adrian sat back. You know what you did was brave, right? It was stupid. It was both. Lena almost smiled. Then her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face went white. What? Adrian asked. She turned the phone so he could see. A photo, taken from the trees, showing Adrian's truck parked in the driveway. And beneath it, a message. He can't protect you. Adrian stared at the photo. His truck. Clear as day. Taken maybe an hour ago based on the angle of the light. They've been watching the whole time, Lena whispered. How long? I don't know. Days, maybe. Adrian's hands curled into fists. They saw Mason. Probably. Where's your car? I told you, I don't have one. Then how are we supposed to get out of here? Lena looked at him like he'd missed something obvious. We're not. If we run now, they'll follow. They'll catch us on the road where there are no witnesses and no help. So we just sit here and wait for them to show up? No, we make them think we're trapped, then we hit back. Adrian stood and started pacing. His brain was moving too fast, spinning through scenarios that all ended badly. You have a plan? Sort of. Sort of isn't good enough. It's all I've got. Lena opened the laptop and pulled up a map of the property. She'd marked locations with red dots. The cameras in the trees, blind spots along the perimeter, the dirt road leading to the main highway. There are at least 3 cameras I know about, she said. Probably more I haven't found. They've been tracking my movements, learning my patterns. How do you know? Because that's what I do. Adrian looked at her. What did you do before this job? Before Vault Dynamics? I was in grad school, computer science, cybersecurity focus. Of course you were. It's how I found the discrepancies. I knew what to look for. And they knew you'd be a problem. Not at first, I was careful, but I got sloppy. Accessed files from my work computer, left a trail. How long before they noticed? 2 weeks, maybe less. Adrian went to the window and peered through the curtains. The driveway was empty. The woods beyond looked still. But somewhere out there, people were watching, waiting. What's your plan? He asked. We make copies of the files and hide them, different locations. Then we send a message to Vault Dynamics saying if anything happens to us, everything goes public. They won't believe that. They will if we send proof, enough to show we're serious but not enough to expose everything. And then what? Then we negotiate. Safe passage in exchange for our silence. Adrian turned to face her. You really think they'll let you walk away? No, but it buys us time. Time for what? To get the files to someone who can actually do something with them. A journalist, a federal prosecutor, someone outside their reach. And who exactly is outside their reach? Lena didn't answer because she didn't have one. Adrian sat back down and rubbed his face. Every part of this felt wrong. Felt like they were playing a game they'd already lost. There's another option, he said. What? We give them what they want. Lena's eyes went hard. No. Hear me out. We hand over the drive, tell them it's the only copy, let them think they won. And then? Then we use the backups you already made, go public while they're celebrating. They'll know I made copies. They're not stupid. So we make it convincing. You're scared, desperate. You just want this to end. People believe what they want to believe. Lena shook her head. The second they get that drive, they'll kill us. No witnesses, no loose ends. Not if we do it in public. Somewhere with cameras, lots of people. They've killed people in public before. You know that for a fact? I know what's in those files, the things they've done. Killing us would be easy. Adrian wanted to argue but couldn't find the angle. She was right. He was out of his depth. This wasn't a rotted dock he could fix with lumber and screws. His phone buzzed. Sarah. He stepped into the other room and answered. Everything okay? Mason's fine. He's watching a movie. But Adrian, what's going on? I can't explain right now. Try. I'm helping someone. It's complicated. Complicated how? The kind where I need you to keep Mason there for a few days and not ask questions. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Are you in danger? I'm being careful. That's not what I asked. Sarah. Fine, but if something happens to you, I'm going to be really pissed. Noted. He hung up and went back to the kitchen. Lena was typing on the laptop, her face lit blue in the dim room. I'm sending encrypted files to 3 different journalists, she said. Timed release. If I don't cancel the timer every 12 hours, they go public automatically. Will that work? It should, unless they figure out how to hack the servers. Can they do that? Probably, but it'll take time. Adrian pulled out a chair and sat. How did you get into this? I told you. No, I mean, how did you end up alone in a lake house with a backpack full of cash and people trying to kill you? That's not a normal career trajectory. Lena stopped typing. I thought I was doing the right thing. You were. Doesn't feel like it. That's because you're still alive. Give it time. She almost smiled. You're very calm for someone in this situation. I'm not calm. I'm terrified. I'm just good at hiding it. Why are you helping me? Really? Adrian thought about that. About Mason laughing at her kitchen table. About the loneliness in her eyes that mirrored his own. About the 3 years he'd spent going through the motions of living without actually feeling alive. Because you reminded me there are things worth fighting for, he said. Lena looked at him for a long moment. Then she went back to typing. They worked through the night, made copies of everything, stashed USB drives in the freezer, inside the dock posts, buried in the garden, sent encrypted files to servers around the world. By the time the sun started to rise, they'd created a web of backups so complicated even Lena wasn't sure she could remember all of them. If something happens to me, she said, the password is Mason. Capital M. The rest lowercase. Adrian's chest tightened. Nothing's going to happen to you. But if it does, it won't. Adrian. I heard you. Password is Mason. They sat on the couch as dawn light filtered through the curtains. Lena leaned against him, exhausted. He could feel her shaking. I'm sorry I dragged you into this, she said quietly. You didn't drag me. I volunteered. You're an idiot. Yeah, I've been told that before. She laughed softly. It was the first time he'd heard her laugh. It sounded like something she'd forgotten how to do. What happens now? She asked. Now we wait. For what? For them to make a move. Then we make ours. You sound like you've done this before. I haven't. I'm completely making this up as I go. Great. You have a better idea? Run, hide, die alone in a ditch somewhere. That's dark. It's realistic. Adrian shifted so he could look at her. You're not going to die in a ditch. You can't know that. I can try. Lena met his eyes. For a second, he thought she might cry. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him. It wasn't planned, wasn't smooth. Their noses bumped and she pulled back immediately, looking mortified. Sorry, I don't know why I did that. Adrian's brain had stopped working. It's okay. It's not okay. That was weird and inappropriate, and he kissed her back. Slower this time, gentler. When they broke apart, Lena looked dazed. Oh, she said. Yeah, this is a terrible idea. Probably. We're both going to die. Maybe. You're really bad at reassurance. I know. She kissed him again. And for a few minutes, they forgot about the cameras in the trees and the people coming to kill them and the evidence hidden beneath the dock. For a few minutes, they were just two broken people finding something worth holding on to. Then Lena's phone buzzed. She pulled away and looked at the screen. Her face went pale. What? Adrian asked. She turned the phone so he could see. Another photo. This one showed Sarah's house. Mason visible through the front window. Beneath it, a message. Nice try. We know where he is. You have until midnight to hand over the drive. Come alone or the kid disappears. Adrian felt the world tilt. His vision tunneled. Every rational thought evaporated. They're not touching him. Adrian, I said they're not touching him. He grabbed his keys and headed for the door. Lena caught his arm. Wait, think about this. There's nothing to think about. I'm getting my son. If you go now, they'll follow you. They'll use him to get to me. I don't care. Yes, you do. You care because if they get that drive, they win. Everything we've done will be for nothing. I don't give a damn about the drive. I care about Mason. And I care about you, both of you. Adrian pulled free. Then help me figure out how to keep him safe. Lena grabbed the laptop and pulled up a map. Where's Sarah's house? Millbrook, about 40 minutes south. Do they know you're coming? They're counting on it. Then we use that. We make them think you're panicking, driving straight there, but we go a different route. Pick up Mason and get him somewhere they can't find him. Where? They found you. They found him. They'll find us anywhere. Not if we're smart. Adrian wanted to punch something, wanted to scream. Instead, he forced himself to breathe. What's the plan? You drive to Millbrook. I'll call Sarah and tell her to get Mason ready. But you don't go to her house. You meet at a neutral location, somewhere public. Like where? A mall, a police station, somewhere with cameras and witnesses. And then? Then you take Mason and disappear. I'll handle vault dynamics. No way. I'm not leaving you alone. You don't have a choice. The hell I don't. Lena grabbed his face. Listen to me. They want the drive. They want me. They don't care about you or Mason except as leverage. If you're gone, they lose that leverage. And what happens to you? I'll figure it out. That's not good enough. It's all we've got. Adrian wanted to argue, wanted to tell her they could find another way. But he looked at the photo of Mason on her phone and knew she was right. Okay, but we do this together. You're coming with us. Adrian, I'm not negotiating. Either we both go or neither of us does. Lena looked like she wanted to fight him on it. Then she nodded. Fine. We go together. They grabbed what they needed. The laptop, the USB drives, a bag with clean clothes and cash. Adrian called Sarah while Lena wiped down the house. Sarah, listen carefully. I need you to take Mason to the Millbrook police station right now. What? Why? I can't explain. Just do it. Tell them you're waiting for me. Don't leave until I get there. Adrian, you're scaring me. I know. I'm sorry. But please, trust me. Okay. We're leaving now. He hung up and found Lena standing by the sliding door, looking out at the dock. You ready? He asked. No, but let's go anyway. They climbed into Adrian's truck and pulled out of the driveway. In the rearview mirror, Adrian watched the blue house disappear behind the trees. He didn't know if they'd ever see it again. The drive to Millbrook felt like it took hours. Every car behind them looked suspicious. Every turn made Adrian's heart race. Lena sat with the laptop open, monitoring the encrypted files and checking the timers. Still set? Adrian asked. Yeah, we've got 8 hours before they auto-release. What if we don't make it? Then at least the truth comes out. That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be. They hit traffic on the highway. Adrian drummed his fingers on the wheel and tried not to imagine what Vault Dynamics would do if they got their hands on Mason. Tell me something, Lena said. What? Anything. I need to stop thinking. Adrian thought for a second. Mason's middle name is James, after my grandfather. He hated it at first. Said it sounded old. But then I told him about my grandfather, how he built houses with his bare hands, how he raised 6 kids during the Depression. Mason decided it was cool after that. Lena smiled. He sounds like a good kid. He is. Better than I deserve. Don't say that. It's true. I've been half asleep for 3 years, just going through the motions. He deserved better. You were grieving. That's not an excuse. It's a reason. Adrian glanced at her. What about you? What's your story before all this? There's not much to tell. I grew up in Oregon, went to college, got into computers, lost my brother when I was 22. Everything else is pretty boring. How did he die? Lena was quiet for a long time. Car accident, drunk driver, he was 19. I'm sorry. Me too. They drove in silence after that. The traffic cleared and Adrian pushed the truck as fast as it would go without the engine giving out completely. They reached Millbrook just after 10 in the morning. The police station sat on Main Street between a coffee shop and a pharmacy. Sarah's car was parked out front. Adrian pulled in next to her and killed the engine. Mason was in the back seat, looking confused and scared. Adrian climbed out and pulled open Sarah's door. You okay? What is going on? I'll explain later. I need to take Mason. Adrian, this is crazy. I know, but I need you to trust me. Sarah looked at Lena, then back at Adrian. Who is she? Someone I'm helping. With what? Sarah, please. She studied his face, then she nodded. Okay, but you owe me a really good explanation. I know. Adrian opened the back door and Mason climbed out. He looked up at Adrian with those wide eyes. Dad, what's happening? We're going on a trip, bud. Just you, me, and Lena. Where? Somewhere safe. Are we in trouble? No, but we need to be careful for a little while. Mason looked at Lena. Is this because of the people who are mad at you? Lena crouched down to his level. Yeah, but your dad and I are going to fix it, I promise. Okay. You're a brave kid, you know that? Mason shrugged. I guess. Adrian picked him up even though he was getting too big for it, held him tight. I love you, Adrian said. I love you too, Dad. They got into the truck. Sarah stood on the sidewalk watching them with worry etched across her face. Adrian started the engine and pulled out. In the mirror, he saw Sarah's lips move. She was mouthing something. Be careful. They drove north out of town. Lena navigated using back roads and side streets, avoiding highways and main roads. Mason sat in the back with his backpack, quiet but alert. Where are we going? He asked after a while. Somewhere no one will find us, Adrian said. Like a secret hideout? Kind of. Cool. Adrian wished he had Mason's ability to see adventure in everything, to trust that adults knew what they were doing even when they clearly didn't. They stopped at a gas station to fill up and grab supplies. Adrian went inside while Lena stayed with Mason. He bought water, snacks, a burner phone, paid cash, avoided the cameras as much as possible. When he came back, Lena was showing Mason something on the laptop. What are you doing? Adrian asked. Teaching him basic encryption. He's 8. He's smart, and if something happens, he should know how to protect himself. Adrian wanted to argue but couldn't find a reason. She was right. Mason should know. They got back on the road. The sun climbed higher and the miles stretched out, and slowly, Adrian started to breathe again. Maybe they'd make it. Maybe they'd find a way out of this. Then Lena's phone rang. She looked at the screen. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Adrian said. I have to. Why? Because if I don't, they'll assume we're running. This keeps them guessing. She answered and put it on speaker. Hello? A man's voice, smooth, calm, the kind of voice that sold insurance and ordered executions with equal ease. Miss Hart, I hope you're having a pleasant morning. Who is this? You know who this is, just like I know where you are, where your friend Adrian is, where his son is. Adrian's hands tightened on the wheel. What do you want? Lena asked. The same thing I've wanted from the beginning, the data you stole. Return it, and this ends peacefully. And if I don't? Then people get hurt, starting with the ones you care about. I don't care about anyone. The man laughed. We both know that's not true. You care about Adrian, about Mason, about doing the right thing. It's why you took the data in the first place. It's why you're still running instead of destroying it. Maybe I already destroyed it. You didn't. You're too smart for that. You made backups, multiple copies, encrypted and hidden, very thorough. Then why do you need me? Because we need all of them, every copy, every file, every piece of evidence, and you're going to give them to us. What makes you think that? Because if you don't, Adrian's son disappears, permanently, and you'll spend the rest of your very short life knowing it was your fault. Lena's face was white. You're bluffing. Am I? We found him once. We can find him again. In fact, we're watching him right now. Adrian's blood turned to ice. He pulled over onto the shoulder and grabbed the phone. Listen to me, he said. You touch my kid and I'll... You'll what? You're a carpenter from a small town. You have no power here. No resources, no protection. The only thing keeping your son alive is Miss Hart's cooperation. If you hurt him, then cooperate. It's very simple. Miss Hart hands over the data. We verify it's complete. Everyone walks away. You'll kill us anyway. Perhaps, but you'll have the satisfaction of knowing you tried to do the right thing. That counts for something, doesn't it? The line went dead. Adrian sat there with the phone in his hand, shaking. Mason leaned forward from the back seat. Dad, what's wrong? Nothing, bud. Everything's fine. But it wasn't fine. It was the furthest thing from fine. Lena took the phone and threw it out the window. It shattered on the pavement. We need a new plan, she said. No, we need to end this. Now. How? Adrian looked at her, at Mason, at the empty road stretching ahead. We give them what they want, but we do it on our terms. Our terms? Lena repeated. She stared at Adrian like he'd grown a second head. You want to negotiate with people who just threatened to kill your son. I want to end this before they actually do it. By giving them everything they want? By making them think we are. Mason shifted in the back seat. Adrian met his eyes in the rearview mirror and forced what he hoped looked like a reassuring smile. It didn't work. The kid was 8, not stupid. Lena leaned closer and lowered her voice. What are you thinking? I'm thinking they're expecting us to run, to panic. So we do the opposite. Which is what? We set up a meeting, public place, lots of witnesses. We hand over a drive and walk away. They'll verify it. When they find out it's fake, it won't be fake. We give them real files, just not all of them. Lena shook her head. They'll know. They have forensic accountants, digital analysts. They'll tear it apart and realize pieces are missing. How long will that take? I don't know. Hours? Maybe a day. Then we have hours. Maybe a day. To do what? Adrian pulled back onto the road and started driving. To make sure the rest of the files get where they need to go. We already set up the auto release, which they probably know about, which means they're already working on stopping it. So what's your plan? Mail hard drives to every newspaper in the country? Something like that. Lena was quiet for a moment, thinking, it could work if we're fast, if we're lucky. I'll take lucky. We'd need to physically deliver copies. Can't trust email or cloud storage. They're probably monitoring everything. So we hand deliver, drive to different cities, drop them with people who can use them. That takes time we don't have. Then we make time. Mason spoke up from the back. I can help. No, Adrian said immediately. Why not? I'm already involved. You're 8. So, I'm smart. Lena said so. Lena glanced back at him. He's right. About being smart, I mean. He's also a child. I'm not a baby, Dad. I didn't say you were. Then let me help. Adrian wanted to say no. Wanted to put Mason on a bus heading far away from this mess. But he also knew that ship had sailed the moment Vault Dynamics sent that photo. Mason was already a target. Keeping him close was the only way to protect him. Fine, Adrian said. But you do exactly what I say. No arguments. Okay. I mean it, Mason. I know. I promise. Lena pulled out the burner phone Adrian had bought and started making calls. First to a lawyer she knew from grad school. Then to a journalist who'd tried to interview her months ago. Then to someone at the FBI field office in Portland. Most didn't answer. The ones who did sounded skeptical or scared or both. But Lena was persistent. She explained enough to hook their interest without revealing where she was or what she was planning. By the time they crossed into Washington state, she'd lined up 3 potential allies. Not much, but better than nothing. The lawyer can meet us in Seattle tomorrow morning, Lena said. The journalist wants proof before she'll commit. The FBI agent said to turn myself in. Are you going to? Turn myself in? No. They'll bury me in red tape while Vault Dynamics destroys evidence. So Seattle first. Yeah. Adrian checked the fuel gauge. They had half a tank, enough to get them another 100 miles maybe. We need to stop, he said. Get gas, food. Let Mason stretch his legs. Stopping is dangerous. So is running on empty. Lena didn't argue. They pulled off at the next exit and found a truck stop with a diner attached. Adrian filled the tank while Lena took Mason inside. He watched them through the window, Lena walking with one hand on Mason's shoulder, Mason looking up at her and saying something that made her smile. They looked like a family. The thought hit Adrian harder than it should have. He finished pumping and went inside. Found them in a booth near the back. Mason had a grilled cheese and Lena was picking at a salad she clearly didn't want. Adrian slid in next to his son. Everything okay? Mason was telling me about his volcano project, Lena said. We still need to finish it, Mason said. It's due next week. We'll figure it out, bud. Lena said she'd help, remember? Adrian looked at Lena. She was staring at her salad like it held answers to questions she hadn't asked yet. Yeah, Adrian said. I remember. They ate in silence for a while. The diner was half full with truckers and travelers who didn't look twice at them, just another family on a road trip. Nothing suspicious. Adrian's phone buzzed. The burner, not his real one. He'd turned that off hours ago. Unknown number. He showed it to Lena. She nodded. He answered and put it on speaker, angling it so Mason couldn't hear. Yeah? The same smooth voice from before. Mr. Cole, I hope you're taking my warning seriously. I'm listening. Good, then let's discuss terms. I'm not discussing anything until I know my son is safe. He's perfectly safe, as long as you cooperate. Define cooperate. Miss Hart returns all copies of the stolen data, every file, every backup. In exchange, you and your son walk away unharmed. And Lena? That depends on her level of cooperation. Not good enough. I'm afraid you don't have much negotiating power here. Adrian leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to set up a meeting, public place, neutral ground. Lena brings the drive. You verify it's what you want. We all walk away. And if the data is incomplete, then we have a problem. But if it's complete, you leave us alone, permanently. The man on the other end laughed. You think it's that simple? I think you want those files more than you want us dead. Otherwise, you would have killed us already. Silence. Long enough that Adrian thought the call had dropped. Then, where and when? Seattle, Pike Place Market, tomorrow at noon. Very public. That's the point. Fine. But Mr. Cole, if you're planning something clever, remember that we can reach your son anytime we want. And next time, we won't be so polite about it. The line went dead. Adrian set the phone down and realized his hands were shaking. Lena reached across the table and squeezed his wrist. You did good, she said quietly. I just painted a target on all of us. We already had one. Yeah, but now they know where we'll be, which gives us control. We pick the location, the time, the terms. Or we walk straight into a trap. Probably both. Adrian wanted to laugh or scream or both. Instead, he picked up his coffee and drank it even though it had gone cold. Mason finished his sandwich and looked between them. Are we going to Seattle? Yeah, bud. I've never been to Seattle. It's nice. You'll like it. Will there be bad guys there? Adrian hesitated. Lying to Mason felt wrong, but so did telling him the truth. There might be, he said finally, but Lena and I are going to make sure you're safe, okay? Okay. You trust me? Yeah. Good. Because I need you to be brave tomorrow. Can you do that? Mason nodded. He looked scared but determined, just like his mother used to look before she'd do something that terrified her. They got back in the truck and drove through the night. Adrian took the first shift while Lena and Mason slept in the back seat, curled up against each other like they'd been doing it for years. Adrian drove and thought about the life he'd built after his wife died. The careful routine, the emotional distance, the way he'd turned himself into a machine that worked and ate and slept and repeated. And then Lena had called and everything had cracked open. He didn't regret it. Even with everything spiraling out of control, even with Mason in danger, he didn't regret it. Because for the first time in 3 years, he felt something other than numb. They reached Seattle around 3 in the morning. The city was quiet, streets wet from recent rain. Adrian found a motel on the outskirts that took cash and didn't ask questions. The room had 2 beds and smelled like cigarettes and cleaning solution. Mason collapsed onto one bed fully clothed and was asleep in seconds. Adrian and Lena sat at the small table by the window. She had the laptop open, fingers flying across the keyboard. "What are you doing?" Adrian asked. "Making sure the auto-release is still active. They've tried to breach the servers twice in the last hour." "Did they get in?" "No, but they're getting closer." "How much time do we have?" "Best case, 12 hours. Worst case, they're already in and I don't know it yet." Adrian rubbed his face. "We should sleep." "I can't." "You need to." "I'll sleep when this is over." "Lena." She looked at him. Her eyes were red and exhausted, and something else he couldn't name. "What if this doesn't work?" she asked quietly. "Then we try something else. And if that doesn't work, then we keep trying until something does." "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple. It's just the only option we have." Lena closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair. "I keep thinking about my brother, about the last thing I said to him before he died." "What was it?" "I told him to stop being dramatic. He'd been drinking at a party and called me for a ride. I was busy with homework. Told him to call someone else. So he drove himself." "That wasn't your fault." "I know. Rationally, I know. But it doesn't change the fact that if I'd just picked up the phone, he'd still be alive." "You can't think like that." "Why not? It's true." "Maybe, but it doesn't help anything." Lena was quiet for a moment. "When did you lose your wife?" 3 years ago. Car accident, drunk driver ran a red light." "I'm sorry." "Me too." "What was her name?" "Claire." "Did she know about Mason's middle name?" "Yeah, it was her idea, actually. She loved my grandfather, said he was the kind of man she wanted our son to be." "Sounds like she was smart." "She was. Smarter than me, anyway." "I doubt that." Adrian looked at Mason sleeping on the bed. "I failed him. After she died, I just shut down, went through the motions. I was so focused on surviving that I forgot he needed more than that." "You were grieving." "So was he, and I left him to do it alone." "You're here now, only because you reminded me how." Lena reached across the table and took his hand. "We're going to get through this, all of us." "You can't promise that." "I can try." Adrian squeezed her hand, then he stood and pulled her to her feet. "Come on, you need sleep." "I should keep monitoring." "You need sleep more than you need to stare at a computer screen." He guided her to the second bed and she lay down without arguing. Adrian pulled a blanket over her and she was asleep before he could say goodnight. He sat in the chair by the window and watched the parking lot, watched the cars pass on the distant highway, watched the sky slowly lighten from black to gray. When the sun finally came up, he woke them both. They had 4 hours until the meeting. They ate breakfast at a diner down the street. Mason was quiet, picking at his pancakes. Lena kept checking her phone. "Stop," Adrian said. "Stop what?" "Checking the phone. You're making me nervous." "I'm making you nervous? We're about to walk into a trap." "Allegedly walk into a trap." "That doesn't make me feel better." "It wasn't supposed to." Mason looked up. "Are you guys fighting?" "No," they said in unison. "It sounds like fighting." "We're just stressed," Lena said. "Sorry." "It's okay. My dad fights with himself all the time." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "I do?" "Yeah, in the truck. You argue with the radio." "That's different." "How?" "The radio's wrong about a lot of things." Lena smiled despite herself. "What does the radio say?" "Sports mostly. They have terrible takes." "Dad really hates the Mariners announcers," Mason added. "They're biased. They're supposed to be biased. They work for the Mariners. Doesn't make it less annoying." Lena laughed. Actually laughed. It was the first genuinely happy sound Adrian had heard from her. They finished breakfast and drove downtown. Pike Place Market was already crowded with tourists and locals. Fishmongers shouted, Street performers played music. The smell of coffee and flowers filled the air. Adrian found parking 3 blocks away. They walked to the market together, Mason between them holding both their hands. "Remember the plan?" Adrian asked quietly. Lena nodded. "I hand over the drive. They verify it. We walk away. And if something goes wrong, you take Mason and run. Don't look back." "I'm not leaving you." "Yes, you are. That's the plan." "Plans change." "Adrian, I'm not arguing about this." They reached the market. Adrian scanned the crowd, looking for faces that didn't fit. Men in suits, people watching too carefully, anything suspicious. But everyone looked normal. Tourists taking photos, families buying flowers, street musicians playing guitar. Maybe this would actually work. Lena's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "North entrance, 5 minutes." "That's our cue," Lena said. They made their way through the crowd toward the north entrance. Adrian kept one hand on Mason's shoulder and the other in his pocket where he'd stashed the pepper spray he'd bought at the truck stop. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. They reached the entrance. A man in a gray suit stood near a flower stand, looking at his phone. He glanced up as they approached. "Miss Hart." "That's me." "And you must be Mr. Cole, and this is Mason." The way he said Mason's name made Adrian's skin crawl. Too familiar, too threatening. "Where's the drive?" the man asked. Lena pulled it from her pocket. Small, black, innocuous. "Everything's on here." "Everything." "We'll need to verify that." "I assumed you would." The man gestured to a van parked nearby. "If you'll come with me." "No," Adrian said. "We do this here." "That's not how this works." "Then we don't have a deal." The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Cole, you're not in a position to make demands." "Actually, I am, because if you try to take us anywhere, I start screaming about kidnappers, and this place has about 1,000 witnesses." The man's smile faded. "You're making this difficult." "Good." They stood there in a standoff while people flowed around them. The man finally pulled out a laptop from his bag and held out his hand for the drive. Lena gave it to him. He plugged it in and started clicking through files. His expression gave nothing away. Adrian felt sweat running down his back despite the cool morning air. Mason pressed closer to his side. After what felt like an hour but was probably 3 minutes, the man looked up. "This is incomplete." "What?" Lena said. "Files are missing. Entire sections of data." "That's impossible. I copied everything." "Apparently you didn't." The man's hand moved toward his jacket. Adrian didn't think. He grabbed Mason and shoved him behind his back. "Don't," Adrian said. Relax, Mr. Cole. I'm just making a phone call." But Adrian saw what was in the man's jacket when it fell open. A gun. Small. Black. Very real. The man pulled out his phone and dialed, spoke quietly. Adrian couldn't hear what he was saying, but the tone was clear. This wasn't going well. The man hung up and looked at Lena. "My employer would like to speak with you. In person." "Not happening," Adrian said. "Then your son gets hurt, right here, right now." "There are cops everywhere. You won't get 3 feet. You'd be surprised what we can get away with." Adrian was about to respond when he heard sirens. Close. Getting closer. The man heard them too. His expression shifted from confident to concerned. "What did you do?" he asked Lena. "Insurance policy," she said. 3 police cars pulled up to the market entrance. Officers got out, hands on their weapons. The man in the gray suit looked at the drive, then at Lena, then at the approaching police. "This isn't over," he said. Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd. Adrian grabbed Lena's hand. "We need to go. Now." They ran. Through the market, down side streets, through alleys. Mason kept up without complaining. Lena led them to a parking garage where she'd stashed a rental car that morning without telling Adrian. "When did you do this?" he asked. "While you were sleeping. Figured we'd need a backup." "You're terrifying." "I know." They climbed in and Lena drove. Fast, but not reckless. Out of downtown and onto the highway, heading south. "Where are we going?" Adrian asked. "Anywhere but here." The police were a distraction. I called in an anonymous tip about a suspicious person. Bought us time. That was smart. That was desperate. They'll figure out it was fake, and then they'll really be mad. Mason leaned forward from the back seat. "Did we win?" Adrian looked at Lena. She looked back at him. I don't know, bud, Adrian said. But we're still alive, so that's something. They drove for 2 hours before Lena pulled over at a rest stop. She grabbed the laptop and started typing furiously. What are you doing? Adrian asked. Checking the auto release. If they didn't get what they wanted, they'll try harder to stop it. And? And it's still secure. For now. We have maybe 6 hours before it goes live. Then what? Then everyone knows what Vault Dynamics has been doing, and they can't stop it. They can still come after us. Not if we disappear. Adrian looked at Mason, at Lena, at the empty highway stretching in both directions. I'm tired of running, he said. What's the alternative? We finish this, tonight. We make sure those files get out. And then we make sure Vault Dynamics knows that if they come after us again, the whole world will know who they are and what they've done. Lena stared at him. That's either the bravest thing I've ever heard or the stupidest. Probably both. She almost smiled. Then she kissed him, hard and fast and desperate. When they broke apart, Mason was watching with wide eyes. Gross, he said. Sorry, bud. Are you guys boyfriend and girlfriend now? Adrian didn't know how to answer that. Lena did. Yeah, she said. I think we are. Okay. Can we get food? I'm hungry. They got food, made plans, waited for night to fall, and when the sun finally set and the auto-release timer hit 0, they sat in the rental car and watched Lena's laptop screen as the files went live. Every news outlet, every government agency, every watchdog organization, the entire corrupt network of Vault Dynamics exposed for the world to see. Within an hour, the first news stories broke. Within 2, executives were being arrested. Within 3, the company's stock had crashed, and the CEO was issuing denials that no one believed. Lena closed the laptop and leaned back in her seat. It's done, she whispered. It's done, Adrian agreed. Mason was asleep in the back, exhausted from a day that should have broken him, but somehow hadn't. What now? Lena asked. Adrian looked at her, at the woman who'd called him in the middle of the night and changed everything. Now we go home, he said. I don't have a home. Yes, you do. If you want it. Lena looked at him for a long moment. Then she started the car and drove. Not south, not east, not away. North. Toward Blackwater Ridge, toward the blue house by the lake, toward whatever came next. Together. They didn't make it back to Blackwater Ridge that night. Exhaustion caught up with them somewhere outside Olympia, and Adrian pulled into a rest stop before he drove them off the road. Mason was already asleep in the back, clutching the book Lena had given him like a lifeline. Lena had her eyes closed, but Adrian could tell she wasn't sleeping. Her breathing was too controlled, too deliberate. You okay? He asked quietly. I don't know yet. Fair enough. Is it always like this, after something big happens? Adrian thought about the days after Claire's funeral, the strange emptiness that followed the chaos, the way normal life kept insisting on happening even when the world felt fundamentally broken. Yeah, he said. Pretty much. Does it get easier? Not easier, just different. Lena opened her eyes and looked at him. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Stop running. Stay in one place. Be a person again. Adrian reached over and took her hand. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. What if I'm terrible at it? Then you'll be terrible at it, but you'll be terrible at it here. With us. She squeezed his hand and closed her eyes again. This time she actually slept. Adrian stayed awake, watching the headlights pass on the highway and thinking about everything that had changed in 2 weeks. A phone call, a doc, a woman with secrets and a backpack full of cash. And now here he was, holding her hand in a rest stop parking lot while his son slept in the back seat and the news cycle tore apart a corrupt company piece by piece. Life was strange that way. You could spend years building walls around yourself, telling yourself you were fine, you were handling it, you were doing what needed to be done. And then someone would show up and knock those walls down without even trying. He wasn't sure if that was good or bad yet. But he knew it was real. They drove the rest of the way in the morning. Mason woke up asking about breakfast and whether they could stop at the donut place near home. Adrian said yes before he could think better of it. Some things were worth the sugar crash. The blue house looked exactly the same when they pulled up. 2 stories of weathered siding, dark windows. The dock visible behind it, solid and new against the gray water. Lena sat in the car staring at it like she was seeing it for the first time. You don't have to stay here, Adrian said. We can find somewhere else. Somewhere without memories. No, I want to stay. I just need a minute. Mason unbuckled and leaned forward. Can I go look at the dock? Stay where I can see you. Okay. He ran off toward the water. Adrian and Lena sat in the quiet car. They're going to keep looking for me, Lena said finally. The company's falling apart, but there are still people who want revenge, who want to make sure I can't testify. Let them look. Adrian, I'm serious. You've got the FBI involved now, reporters watching. The whole thing's public. They can't touch you without making it worse for themselves. You don't know that. No, but I believe it, and I think you should too. Lena looked at him. When did you get so optimistic? About 2 weeks ago, right around the time a stranger offered me $15,000 to rebuild a dock in the middle of the night. She laughed. Actually, laughed. That was a terrible decision on my part. Probably the best one you ever made. We'll see. They got out and walked down to where Mason was testing the boards with his feet, jumping on them to see if they'd hold. It's strong, he announced. It better be. I built it. Can we fish off it? You know how to fish? No, but I could learn. Adrian looked at Lena. She shrugged. I guess you could learn, Adrian said. Mason grinned and went back to jumping on the boards. Lena stood at the edge, looking out at the water. I used to be afraid of lakes, she said quietly. After my brother died. Couldn't go near them without feeling sick. And now? Now I live next to one. Funny how that works. You think he'd be proud of you for what you did? Lena was quiet for a long moment. I think he'd tell me I was an idiot for getting involved in the first place. But yeah, maybe he'd be proud too. Adrian put his arm around her shoulders and she leaned into him. They stood like that watching Mason play and the water lap against the dock posts until the cold drove them inside. The next few weeks were strange, quiet in a way that felt almost wrong after everything that had happened. Lena gave her testimony to federal investigators. Adrian went back to work, taking small jobs around town while keeping his phone close in case Lena needed him. Mason went back to school and told everyone his dad's girlfriend was a genius who'd taken down $1 billion company. Half the kids didn't believe him. The other half thought it was the coolest thing they'd ever heard. Sarah called Adrian one night demanding the full story. He gave her the abbreviated version over coffee while Mason showed Lena his finished volcano project in the other room. You're dating a whistleblower, Sarah said. Technically, I'm dating a former financial analyst who happened to find evidence of massive fraud. That's the same thing. Is it, though? Sarah shook her head. You always did have a gift for understatement. One of my many talents. How's Mason handling it? Adrian glanced toward the living room where he could hear Lena explaining something about baking soda ratios and Mason's delighted laughter. Better than me, honestly. He loves her. And you? I love her too. You sure? Because this is fast, Adrian. Really fast. I know. And you're okay with that? Adrian thought about it. About Claire and the 3 years he'd spent half alive. About the phone call that had changed everything. About Mason laughing in the other room like he'd forgotten what it felt like to be scared. Yeah, he said. I'm okay with it. Sarah studied his face. Good, because you look happier than you have in years. I feel happier. Then I'm happy for you, both of you. The trials started in March. Adrian and Lena drove to Seattle twice for her testimony. She was nervous the first time, hands shaking as they walked into the federal courthouse. But when she took the stand, something changed. Her voice steadied. Her back straightened. She looked the defense attorneys in the eye and told them exactly what she'd found and why it mattered. Adrian watched from the gallery and felt something like pride mixed with awe. This was the woman who'd hidden in a lake house for 2 months, too scared to leave. And now she was facing down the people who'd tried to destroy her and refusing to blink. The verdicts came down in May. Guilty on all counts for 6 executives. The CEO got 20 years. The CFO got 15. The rest got varying sentences that added up to more time than any of them had left. Lena cried when she heard. Not from happiness exactly. More like relief. Like she'd been holding her breath for 8 months and could finally exhale. They celebrated quietly that night. Just the 3 of them and a pizza on the dock watching the sun set over the lake. Mason asked if this meant the bad guys were gone forever. Not forever, Lena said. but for a long time. Good. You know what this means, though? What? I need to find a job. Can't live off savings forever. Mason looked at Adrian. Can she work with us? Doing what? Hammering nails? I don't know. She's smart. She could do the money stuff. Adrian raised an eyebrow. The money stuff? You know, invoices and taxes and all the boring things you complain about. I don't complain. You literally complained about invoices this morning. Lena was trying not to laugh. He's got a point. Whose side are you on? The side with the good ideas. Adrian looked between them. Are you two ganging up on me? Yes, they said together. Great. But the truth was he didn't mind. Hadn't minded anything in weeks. And the idea of Lena working with him, of building something together beyond just survival, felt right in a way he couldn't quite articulate. Okay, he said, but you're doing all the invoices. Deal. Summer came, and with it a kind of peace Adrian had forgotten existed. He and Lena worked together during the day. She was terrible with power tools, but brilliant with numbers, and somehow managed to organize his entire chaotic business system in 3 weeks. They took on bigger jobs, started hiring help. Mason worked with them sometimes, learning to measure and cut and sand. In July, Adrian's truck finally died for good. The grinding noise turned into a full mechanical failure on the side of the highway. They had it towed to a junkyard and bought a used pickup that actually started reliably. Lena insisted they get one with 4 doors so Mason would be more comfortable. You're going soft, Adrian said. I'm being practical. You cried at the junkyard. I did not. You did. I saw you. That was allergies. To what? Old trucks? She punched his arm, but she was smiling. They moved Lena's things from the Blue House to Adrian's apartment in August. It wasn't much. She'd been living out of a suitcase for months anyway, but watching her unpack books and hang pictures on the walls felt significant, permanent. Mason helped her arrange furniture in what used to be the spare room and was now officially Lena's office. He had strong opinions about where the desk should go and whether the bookshelf should be by the window or the door. You're very particular, Lena said. My dad says I get it from my mom. Was she particular? About some things. She always wanted the coffee mugs arranged by color. Dad still does it that way. Lena glanced at Adrian. He shrugged. Old habits, he said. That night after Mason went to bed, Lena found him in the kitchen rearranging the mugs. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue. You don't have to keep doing that, she said quietly. I know. But you want to. Yeah. Can I ask why? Adrian set down the blue mug and turned to face her. Because it reminds me that she existed, that we were happy, that before everything went wrong, we had something good. And you think I'll be upset about that? I don't know. Some people would be. Lena walked over and wrapped her arms around him. I'm not some people, and I would never ask you to forget her. Even though I'm here now, even though we're together. She was important to you. She gave you Mason. That matters. Adrian held her tight and felt something in his chest loosen, some fear he'd been carrying without realizing it. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For understanding. Always. September brought Mason's 9th birthday. They threw a party at the Blue House with half his class and too much cake. Lena had spent a week planning games and decorations. Adrian had built a wooden swing set by the lake that Mason and his friends immediately claimed as a fort. Watching Lena coordinate a dozen sugar-high 9-year-olds with the same calm efficiency she'd used to take down a corrupt corporation was something Adrian would remember forever. She was terrifying and impressive, and he'd never loved her more. Later, after the kids went home and they were cleaning up, Mason came over with something hidden behind his back. I have a question, he said. Shoot, Adrian said. Is Lena going to stay forever? Adrian looked at Lena. She looked back at him. I hope so, Adrian said. Why? Because I made her something and I don't want to give it to her if she's going to leave. What did you make? Mason pulled out a picture frame. Inside was a drawing of the 3 of them on the dock, stick figures with huge smiles. Above it, he'd written in careful letters, My family. Lena's eyes filled with tears. You made this for me? She asked. Yeah, is it okay? I know you're not technically my mom, but you kind of feel like it, so I thought maybe Lena pulled him into a hug so tight he squeaked, "It's more than okay. It's perfect." "So you're staying?" "Yeah, I'm staying." "Good." Adrian watched them and felt his own eyes burn. 3 years ago, he'd been convinced he'd never feel whole again, that the best he could hope for was getting through each day without falling apart. And here he was watching his son hug the woman who'd stumbled into their lives and somehow made them a family again. October was when Adrian started thinking about the future in concrete terms. Not just tomorrow or next week, but months and years ahead. He and Lena were lying in bed one night when he asked the question that had been circling his brain for weeks. "Do you ever think about having kids?" Lena turned to look at him. "Where's this coming from?" "I don't know, just thinking." "About me having kids?" "About us having kids? Maybe. Someday. We already have Mason." "I know, but I mean another one. A baby." Lena was quiet for a moment. "I used to think about it, before everything happened. But I always figured I'd have time. And now? Now I'm 30 and dating a single dad and trying to figure out how to live a normal life after spending 8 months in hiding. A baby feels complicated." "Everything's complicated. That's true. But is it something you'd want eventually?" Lena rolled over to face him fully. "Are you asking because you want another kid or because you think I want one?" "Both, maybe." "Adrian, okay, fine, I want one. I want to do it right this time, be present from the start, not just surviving, but actually living. You were a good dad to Mason, even when you were grieving." "I was an okay dad. I want to be better." Lena touched his face. "You're already better." "So is that a yes?" "That's a maybe. Ask me again in a year." "Deal." They kissed, and Adrian felt the future stretch out ahead of them, full of possibility instead of dread. It was a new feeling, a good one. November brought the first snow. Mason had never seen a real snowfall before, just the occasional dusting that melted by noon. But this was the kind that stuck. 3 inches overnight that turned the lake house property into something from a postcard. Mason dragged them outside at dawn to build a snowman. Lena found a carrot in the fridge for the nose, and Mason used rocks for the eyes. Adrian contributed his old baseball cap. "He looks good," Mason declared. "He looks like he's seen things," Lena said. "All the best snowmen have." They had a snowball fight that left all 3 of them soaked and freezing. Adrian started a fire in the fireplace while Lena made hot chocolate. Mason sat between them on the couch, wrapped in blankets, completely content. "This is the best day ever," he said. Adrian looked at Lena. She was smiling at him over Mason's head. "Yeah," Adrian said, "it really is." December arrived faster than expected. Mason's volcano project won 2nd place in the science fair. Lena's testimony helped convict 2 more executives who'd tried to flee the country. Adrian landed a contract to restore 3 historic homes downtown. Everything was clicking into place in a way that felt almost too good to be real. But it was real. Adrian checked every day. Woke up expecting to find it had all been a dream. But Lena was always there. Mason was always happy. The work kept coming. Life kept happening in the best possible way. The week before Christmas, Adrian took Mason shopping for Lena's present. They wandered the stores in Blackwater Ridge looking for something meaningful. "What is she like?" Mason asked. "Books, coffee, you." "I can't give her me. I'm already here." "Fair point." They ended up in a small jewelry store Adrian had never noticed before. The owner was an older woman who asked what they were looking for. "Something special," Adrian said. "For what?" "For someone who means everything." The woman smiled and pulled out a tray of necklaces. Mason pointed to one immediately. "That one?" It was simple. A silver chain with a small pendant shaped like a compass. Delicate but strong. "Why that one?" Adrian asked. "Because she was lost, and now she's not. Compasses help people find their way home." The woman behind the counter had tears in her eyes. "Smart kid." "He has his moments." They bought the necklace. Adrian spent more than he probably should have, but didn't care. Christmas morning was chaos. Mason woke them up at 6, demanding they open presents immediately. They stumbled downstairs in pajamas, and Lena made coffee, while Adrian tried to convince Mason that 7 was a more reasonable hour. "It's already 6:30, Mason argued. That's basically 7. That's not how time works. It is on Christmas. Lena handed Adrian coffee and kissed his cheek. Let him open one. Then we'll do the rest at 7. You're undermining my authority. I know. It's fun. They opened presents in a pile of wrapping paper and ribbon. Mason got the art supplies he'd asked for and some books and a new winter coat that actually fit. Lena gave Adrian a vintage toolbox she'd found at an estate sale with his initials already carved in the side. Adrian gave her the necklace. She cried when she opened it, actually cried. It's perfect, she whispered. Mason picked it. She pulled Mason into a hug. Thank you. You're welcome. Does this mean I can open my present from you now? Yes. Mason tore into the package Lena handed him and found a leather journal with his name embossed on the cover. For your stories, Lena said, I know you like making things up. Thought you might want somewhere to write them down. Mason hugged her again. This is so cool. Adrian watched them and felt his chest tighten with something that felt like gratitude mixed with disbelief. A year ago, he'd been alone with Mason in a cramped apartment counting pennies and wondering how they'd make it through another winter. And now he had this. A family. A future. A reason to believe things could actually get better instead of just less bad. The rest of December passed in a blur of holiday parties and family dinners. Sarah hosted a New Year's Eve gathering where she grilled Lena about her intentions with Adrian while pretending to be subtle about it. I love him, Lena said simply. And Mason. Is that what you wanted to know? Sarah grinned. Yeah, that'll do. When midnight came, Adrian kissed Lena on the porch while fireworks exploded over the lake. Mason was inside eating too much cake and arguing with Sarah's nephew about video games. The world felt balanced. Right. Happy New Year, Lena said. Happy New Year. Any resolutions? Just one. What's that? Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Start trusting that this is real. Lena pulled him closer. It's real. I know. Do you? Adrian looked at her. At the woman who'd called him in the middle of the night offering money for dock repair and ended up changing his entire life. Who'd been brave enough to fight back when the world tried to break her? Who loved his son like he was her own? Yeah, he said. I do. January brought a letter from the federal prosecutor thanking Lena for her testimony and informing her that the case was officially closed. All targets convicted, all evidence secured. She could move on with her life. She read it twice, then set it on the kitchen table and stared at it like it might vanish. It's really over, she said. Adrian sat down next to her. How does it feel? Strange. Like I don't know what to do without something to run from. You could try running towards something instead. Like what? I don't know. Whatever you want. That's the whole point. Lena looked at him. What if I don't know what I want? Then we'll figure it out together, same as everything else. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm not good at this. At what? Being happy. I keep waiting for it to end. So do I. But maybe it doesn't have to. You really believe that? I'm trying to. That's enough. February was when Adrian started planning. He'd been thinking about it for weeks, but hadn't known how to make it happen. Finally, he asked Sarah for help. I want to propose, he said. About time. Is it though? We've only been together for 6 months. You've been through more in 6 months than most people experience in a lifetime. Time's relative. That's what I keep telling myself. So what do you need? Ideas. I want it to be special, meaningful, something she'll remember. Sarah thought for a moment. Where did you first meet? The real first meeting, not the phone call. The lake house, the dock. Then do it there, the place that started everything. Adrian thought about the dock he'd rebuilt, the place where he'd found those hidden cameras and realized Lena was in danger, the place where everything had changed. Yeah, he said, that could work. He spent the next 2 weeks planning, bought a ring he definitely couldn't afford but didn't care, asked Mason for permission in a conversation that made them both cry, coordinated with Lena's schedule to make sure she'd be free without making her suspicious. The day he'd chosen was the first Saturday in March, exactly 1 year since he'd finished rebuilding the dock. He told Lena he wanted to have dinner at the lake house to celebrate the anniversary of the project. She bought it without question. They drove out in the afternoon. Mason was staying with Sarah, supposedly for a sleepover, but really so he wouldn't spoil the surprise. Lena had packed a picnic basket and was talking about some new restoration project they'd bid on. Adrian barely heard her. His brain was too busy running through the plan. Park. Walk to the dock. Wait for sunset. Say the words he'd been rehearsing for days. Hope she said yes. They reached the house and walked down to the water. The dock looked exactly as Adrian had left it. Solid, strong, built to last. Lena set down the basket and turned to him. "You're quiet." "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how different everything is from a year ago." She smiled. "Yeah, it's been quite a year." "Do you regret any of it?" "Regret what? Getting you involved in my mess?" "All of it. The running, the fear, everything." Lena was quiet for a moment. "I regret that people got hurt, that you and Mason were in danger because of me. But regret meeting you? Regret what we've built? No, never." "Good." "Why?" Adrian took a breath and pulled the ring from his pocket. Lena's eyes went wide. "Because I want to keep building," he said, "with you, for as long as you'll have me." "Adrian, I know it's fast. I know we've only been together 6 months. I know there are 1,000 reasons to wait, but I don't want to wait. I want to marry you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and build a life together and maybe have another kid someday if you're still thinking about it. I want all of it, with you." Lena was crying. "You're serious?" "Completely." "You really want to marry me?" "More than anything." "What about Mason? Have you asked him?" "He gave his enthusiastic approval. Also suggested we have the wedding at the lake house because the dock would look good in pictures." Lena laughed through her tears. "He's not wrong." "So is that a yes?" "You haven't actually asked the question yet." Adrian got down on one knee. The boards creaked under him but held firm. "Lena Hart, will you marry me?" She dropped to her knees in front of him and kissed him hard. When they broke apart, she was smiling and crying at the same time. "Yes. Yes. Absolutely yes." Adrian slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd measured 3 times. They sat there on the dock as the sun set, holding each other and watching the light fade across the water. A year ago, Adrian had been standing in this exact spot wondering what he'd gotten himself into, and now he knew. He'd gotten into the rest of his life. They told Mason that night over video call. He screamed so loud Sarah came running to make sure he was okay. "She said yes," he shouted. "Dad, she said yes." "I heard, bud." "When's the wedding? Can I be the best man? Can we have cake?" "We'll figure out all the details, but yes, you can be the best man." "This is the best day ever." After they hung up, Lena curled against Adrian on the couch. He's really excited. He's been planning this wedding in his head for months. Has he? He made a list, very detailed. I'm pretty sure he has opinions about flowers. Lena laughed. Of course he does. They got married in June at the lake house like Mason had suggested. Small ceremony, just close friends and family. Sarah was Lena's maid of honor. Mason was indeed the best man and took his duties very seriously. He'd written a speech that made everyone cry and laugh in equal measure. Adrian stood on the dock he'd built and watched Lena walk toward him in a simple white dress with flowers in her hair, and thought about everything that had led them here. The phone call, the fear, the running, the choice to fight back instead of hide, the slow building of trust and love and family. Life wasn't a straight line from broken to whole. It was messy and complicated, and sometimes you had to lose everything to realize what actually mattered. But standing there watching the woman he loved promise to spend her life with him, Adrian thought maybe the mess was worth it. Maybe the pain and fear and uncertainty had been necessary to get them to this moment. Or maybe he was just lucky. Lucky that Lena had called. Lucky that he'd said yes. Lucky that they'd both been brave enough to try. When the officiant said they could kiss, Adrian pulled Lena close and kissed her like they weren't surrounded by people. Like it was just them and the lake and the dock that had started everything. Mason cheered. Everyone else joined in. And Adrian thought this was what healing looked like. Not forgetting the past, but building something new on top of it. Not pretending the pain hadn't happened, but choosing joy anyway. They danced on the deck as the sun set. Mason requested 3 songs in a row, and Lena indulged him every time. Adrian watched them spinning and laughing and felt something settle in his chest, something that had been unsettled for 3 years. Later, after everyone left and Mason had fallen asleep in the guest room, Adrian and Lena walked out to the dock one more time. The water was calm. The stars were out. Everything felt possible. "You ever think about that first night?" Lena asked. "When I called you?" "All the time." "Do you wish I hadn't?" "Never. You changed my life." "You changed mine too." They stood there holding each other, and Adrian thought about all the ways a life could break and heal and break again, about how you could spend years just surviving and call it living, about how sometimes the scariest thing was letting yourself hope for more. But hope was what had brought them here. Hope, and a phone call, and a rotted dock, and the choice to help someone even when it made no sense. A year and a half ago, Adrian had been drowning. Now he could breathe again, and that was worth everything. The months that followed were ordinary in the best way. Mason started 4th grade. Lena launched her own consulting firm helping small businesses with financial planning. Adrian's contracting company grew until he had to hire 2 full-time employees. They sold Adrian's old apartment and moved into the lake house permanently, fixed up the spare rooms, planted a garden, made it theirs. In October, Lena came home from the doctor with news that made Adrian's hand shake and his heart race. "I'm pregnant," she said quietly. "You're serious?" "Very. But we weren't trying." "I know. Surprise." Adrian picked her up and spun her around even though she protested. When he set her down, he was crying. "This is really happening," he said. "Yeah, this is really happening." They told Mason that night over dinner. His reaction was immediate and enthusiastic. "I'm going to be a big brother?" "You already are a big brother," Lena said. "But yeah, you'll have a younger sibling." "Do we know if it's a boy or girl?" "Not yet. Can we name it something cool like Rex or Nova?" "We'll consider all suggestions." Mason started making a list immediately. Adrian watched Lena's hand drift to her stomach, protective and gentle. "You okay?" he asked later. "I'm terrified." "Me too." "What if something goes wrong?" "Then we deal with it, together." "What if I'm terrible at this?" "You won't be." "You don't know that." "Actually, I do. I've watched you with Mason. You're going to be amazing." Lena leaned against him. "I hope you're right." "I usually am." "That's not true at all." "Fine. But I'm right about this." Their daughter was born in May on a rainy afternoon that reminded Adrian of the night he'd first driven to the lake house. Lena's labor was long and difficult and terrifying, and when it was finally over and they placed the baby in her arms, Adrian thought his heart might actually explode. "She's perfect," Lena whispered. "Yeah. What should we call her?" They'd been debating names for months. Mason had contributed approximately 50 suggestions, most of which were rejected immediately. But standing there looking at his daughter, Adrian knew exactly what her name should be. "Claire," he said quietly, after her big brother's mom, "if that's okay." Lena looked at him with tears streaming down her face. "That's more than okay." Mason met his sister that evening. He held her carefully, like she might break, and stared at her with wonder. "She's so small," he said. "You were that small once," Adrian said. "Really?" "Really. Did you hold me like this?" "All the time." Mason looked up at Adrian. "Are you going to love her more than me?" Adrian's chest tightened. "No, bud. Never. I love you both exactly the same amount, which is more than anything in the world. Promise?" "Promise." Mason seemed satisfied. He looked back at baby Claire. "Hi, I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you everything I know, which is a lot." Lena laughed softly. Adrian pulled them all close. His family, complete and messy and perfect in its imperfection. The first year with Claire was exhausting. Adrian had forgotten how little sleep was possible on. But watching Lena with their daughter, seeing Mason step into his role as big brother, made every sleepless night worth it. Life settled into a new rhythm. Work and school and diaper changes and family dinners. Mason taught Claire to laugh. Lena taught Mason to cook. Adrian taught them both that sometimes the most important thing you could do was show up and try. On their 2nd anniversary, they went back to the dock. Sarah watched both kids. Adrian and Lena sat on the boards and watched the sunset just like they had the night he proposed. "You ever miss it?" Adrian asked. "Miss what?" "The adrenaline, the running, the feeling that everything mattered." Lena thought about it. Sometimes. But then I remember what I was running from, and I look at what I have now, and I realize this matters more. Even when it's boring, especially when it's boring. Boring means safe. Boring means no one's trying to kill us. I'll take boring any day. Adrian kissed her. I love you. I love you too. Thank you. For what? For calling me that night, for trusting me, for choosing to stay. Thank you for answering, for helping, for giving me a reason to stop running. They sat there as the stars came out, and Adrian thought about how far they'd come. From fear to peace, from surviving to living, from broken to whole. It hadn't been easy. There had been setbacks and fights, and moments when they'd both wondered if they'd made a mistake. But those moments had been outnumbered by the good ones. The laughter and love and small, ordinary miracles that made up a life. Mason was 10 now, confident and kind and exactly the person Adrian had hoped he'd become. Claire was learning to walk, stumbling around the house with determination that reminded Adrian of Lena. And Lena herself had transformed from the scared woman hiding at the end of a gravel road into someone strong and settled and home. Home. That was the word that mattered. Not a place, but a feeling. The knowledge that you belonged somewhere, that people would catch you if you fell, that you didn't have to do everything alone. Adrian had spent 3 years thinking he'd lost that forever when Claire died, but he'd been wrong. You didn't get one chance at home. You could build it again. Different, but no less real. And sometimes home started with a phone call in the middle of the night, and a dock that needed rebuilding and the choice to help a stranger, even when everything told you not to. 3 years after that phone call, Adrian stood on the dock he'd built and looked out at the lake. Mason was inside reading to Claire. Lena was making dinner. The air smelled like pine and water and possibility. He'd started this project thinking he was just fixing wood and posts. But really, he'd been rebuilding his life, learning how to trust again, how to love again, how to believe that the future could be better than the past. The dock had held, through storms and seasons and everything life had thrown at it, just like they had. And that was the thing about rebuilding. You had to believe it was possible, had to trust the foundation you were laying even when you couldn't see the finished product, had to keep going when everything told you to quit. But if you did, if you kept showing up and trying and choosing hope over fear, sometimes you got this. A family, a home, a life worth living. Adrian walked back to the house as the last light faded. Lena met him at the door with flour on her hands and love in her eyes. "Dinner's almost ready," she said. "Good, I'm starving." "Mason wants to eat outside, something about stars and storytelling." "Sounds perfect." And it was. They ate on the deck with blankets against the cool evening air. Mason told elaborate stories that made Claire laugh. Lena held Adrian's hand under the table. The stars came out one by one. This was what happiness looked like. Not perfect, not easy, but real and earned and worth every hard moment that had led them here. Adrian looked at his family and thought about all the ways a single choice could change everything. How answering a phone call could lead to this. How helping someone could save you both. Life was strange that way. You thought you were building a dock, but really you were building a future. You thought you were just surviving, but really you were learning how to live again. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you got a second chance. Not to erase the past, but to honor it by building something new. Something that acknowledged the pain but chose joy anyway. Adrian squeezed Lena's hand. She squeezed back. They'd made it. Through the fear and danger and uncertainty, through the rebuilding and healing and learning to trust. They'd made it home. And that was everything.